Welcome to StaalX Construction and Steel Podcast. Episode 3, Headwinds Ahead, Why Construction is Slowing and Imports are Drying Up. This episode is brought to you by StaalX, the digital steel marketplace that puts control in your hands. Whether you're sourcing rebar, wire rod, or welded mesh, StaalX offers instant quotes, flexible payment options, and fast delivery, all in one platform. Visit StaalX.com to experience frictionless steel procurement today.
Welcome back. You asked us to figure out what the heck is going on with the construction sector right now because, frankly, the signals you sent us are completely fragmented.
Yeah, all over the place.
We are seeing job demand just evaporate in some places while material prices are staying stubborn, and overall project activity, the very thing you can see when you look up, seems to be, well, falling fast.
And that's our mission today, to try and synthesize these conflicting data streams. We've pulled 4 key sources here.
Okay.
We've got the AGC's Labor Digest, Construct Connect's Project Stress Index, the latest North American crane count, which is pretty telling, and a deep update on how tariffs are twisting the steel market.
Right.
And when we put them all together, they stop being just noise and actually start confirming a crucial concept.
Yeah.
We are in a transitional and structurally, well, bifurcated market.
Bifurcation. Okay, that's the central theme then. It means we aren't seeing one uniform slowdown across the board. It's more like public infrastructure projects are kind of keeping the lights on, while private commercial development is really slamming the brakes.
That's a good way to put it. And this whole market is under intense pressure, much of which is, frankly, self-inflicted policy uncertainty.
Which brings us right to the immediate concern.
Yeah, that policy uncertainty starts right now with the risk of a potential government shutdown scheduled for, early October?
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
When people hear shutdown, they usually think of federal offices closing, maybe national parks. But how does that political paralysis translate into, physical stoppage on a construction site? We often hear that big funded projects like those under the Massive Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, they're supposed to be insulated. Is that actually true?
It's mostly true, yeah. But the insulation only goes so far. Projects relying on already appropriated funds, like the funding streams from the IIJA or the Highway Trust Fund, they do have their money secured. Projects run by agencies like the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, or Federal Transit Administration, FTA, they should technically continue normally. The funding itself isn't the immediate problem.
So if the money's still there, where does the wrench get thrown into the gears? What stops things?
The wrench is the human element. Federal oversight. It always comes down to people, right? Projects relying entirely on federal dollars, especially things like cost-type contracts or anything needing a final sign-off, they could immediately stall.
Why?
Because the necessary federal staff, like contracting officers, quality inspectors, or, key approvers, they would be furloughed, gone home.
Okay.
And a project cannot legally proceed without that federal input or that final approval. It just stops.
That makes sense. So it's not the funding pipeline drying up immediately. It's the required bureaucracy, the sign-offs that goes dark.
Precisely.
But does a 2-week shutdown really cause long-term pain? Or is it just an annoying delay? I mean, does the government actually feel the consequences of this kind of instability?
Well, the contractors in the supply chain certainly do. Prolonged delays mean suppliers have to reprice their bids, which often go up, by the way.
Right.
And crews have to be remobilized, which means more cost, more hassle for the contractor. But on a macro level, you're right, repeated shutdowns, they erode confidence. Confidence in the government as a reliable partner. And that lack of trust is a fundamental problem. It forces firms to basically bake an uncertainty premium into their future bids.
So it costs taxpayers more down the line.
Exactly. It influences both pricing and even participation in federal work for years to come. Some might just say it's not worth the headache.
Okay, so that uncertainty isn't just a political headache in D.C. It translates into physical hesitation, which we can actually see when we look up. Let's move from that uncertainty to actual physical evidence of market health, starting with the RLB crane count. What are the cranes telling us?
They are shouting a warning, honestly. The Ryder-Levitt-Bucknell biannual crane count, it covers 16 major North American cities. It dropped a stunning 44% compared to the previous report just a few months ago.
44%. Wow. That's not a correction. That sounds like a collapse in future high-rise planning.
It's dramatic. Exactly. 7 of the surveyed cities saw declines greater than 20%. Look at New York City. Its crane count dropped from 9 to 6. That's a clear signal that high interest rates and financing constraints are just killing projects at the planning stage.
And LA.
Los Angeles experienced a really sharp drop, too, falling from 42 cranes down to 26. Now, some of that LA decline was because some major commercial and cultural projects were wrapping up. But still, the momentum is undeniably negative.
Wait a second. How can national construction pricing still be up, or at least sticky, if the physical evidence, the number of cranes literally building tomorrow's skylines, is down 44%? That sounds like a major contradiction.
It does, right. And that is the unique paradox RLB highlighted in the report. Rising national pricing, contrasting with this dramatically fragmented local activity. It just screams transitional market. But the good news, if you can call it that, is that the public sectors seem to be the exception holding things up.
Okay.
Denver, for instance, actually saw a 50% increase in cranes.
Wow.
Driven by mixed-use residential, and broadly, sectors like education, federal, and transportation are holding steady. Again, it highlights that bifurcation you mentioned earlier, public versus private.
So it really looks like high interest rates have done their job filtering out that private risk appetite. Okay, now let's pair that crane activity with the Construct Connect Project Stress Index. This tracks things like delayed bids and projects put on hold, right?
Yeah, the Project Stress Index, or PSI, it tracks the health of the project pipeline. Now, while the PSI saw a small month-over-month decline in August, which might sound positive at first glance.
Uh-oh, I sense a but coming. If we zoom out, the real story isn't just delay, it's something worse, isn't it?
It is. The PSI is actually up 19% year over year compared to last August, 19% higher stress.
Okay, and why? What's driving that?
And that massive year over year increase is largely driven by, get this, a shocking 88.2% spike in project abandonment activity.
Abandonment, 88%.
88.2%.
Yeah.
Projects aren't merely getting delayed or put on hold, hoping for better rates down the line. They are being scrapped entirely. The capital is just exiting the sector.
Wow. That 88.2% number is maybe the most potent indicator we've discussed so far. When projects get abandoned, the immediate need for, well, human capital, for workers, just vanishes.
Exactly.
Which leads us perfectly into the labor market signals. Using the AGC data digest, what's happening with jobs?
Well, the labor data confirms that urgency to hire has pretty much disappeared. August 2025 was the first month since way back in 2021 where a minority of metro areas, only 177 out of 360 posted construction job gains year over year.
Less than half.
Less than half, yeah. 49%. That marks a definitive slowdown in hiring expansion across the country.
And I bet the regional split is dramatic, reinforcing that two-speed economy you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. We see the largest percentage loss in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, down negative 11%. Yet you look at the Washington, D.C. area metro divisions, they were adding significant jobs, nearly 6,700 combined.
Which reflects that steady federal and transportation work,
Yeah.
right, holding up the public sector side.
Directly. But maybe the most alarming sign of reduced demand is the plunge in available jobs overall. Job openings in construction fell by 116,000.
How much is that percentage-wise?
That's a massive 38% drop year over year, down to only 188,000 openings nationally.
38% drop in openings. Is that just a delayed reaction to interest rates finally sinking in? Or does this suggest a bigger structural shift in contractor confidence? Like, are they scared?
I think it suggests fundamental fear. That drop pushed the job openings rate down to 2.2%. That's the lowest rate we've seen in any month since October 2015. Think about that.
Wow. Almost a decade low.
Yeah. If you're running a construction firm, that 38% drop doesn't just mean, maybe hiring is a bit easier. It means your competitor across town has probably stopped bidding on new work because they're scared the pipeline is drying up.
And what about layoffs versus hires?
Well, look at the flow. Layoffs and discharges actually rose 7.0% year over year. That's the highest August rate since 2020 during the pandemic disruption. And conversely, the hires rate was the second lowest August rate in the entire 25-year history of the series.
So fewer coming in, more going out. The contraction is real.
It definitely looks that way.
Okay, that paints a pretty dark picture for the demand side, driven by financing costs and uncertainty. Let's pivot now from that falling demand to the supply side. How is this environment affecting steel? That critical construction input.
Right, steel. Well, the steel market is under its own unique set of pressures, primarily shifting trade policy and tariffs, We're seeing new tariffs taking effect right now, like the 10% on softwood lumber and the 25% on kitchen cabinets this October.
And cabinets are going even higher.
Yeah, those are set to jump again to 50% in January. Big increases.
So how are domestic mills reacting to these protectionist moves, especially given that construction demand is clearly softening? Are they just jacking up prices?
Actually, no, not across the board. Domestically, the mills seem to be incredibly disciplined right now. They're supported by pretty stable scrap pricing, and they seem to be wisely avoiding official price increases for long products like wire rod. They're trying to keep the domestic market stable even as demand softens.
Okay, but the tariffs are clearly impacting imports, right? That's the point of them.
Oh, they absolutely are. The import numbers have just crashed, and this is where the market gets really fascinating.
How so?
Look at wire rod imports. They plummeted to just 30,000 metric tons in September. The 12-month average was 94,000 metric tons. That's a huge drop.
Massive. And rebar?
Rebar imports were equally low. Only 10,000 metric tons came in during September compared to a 75,000 average.
Yeah.
Tiny.
But what's fascinating here, as you said in the outline, is that domestic rebar mills are currently struggling to keep up with existing demand, even with those low import numbers and lower overall construction activity. How does that work?
Precisely. For the long products like rebar, the existing demand from those public projects, that bifurcation we keep mentioning, is still tight enough that domestic capacity is constrained, especially now that the cheap imports aren't flooding in.
So the tariffs are working for rebar producers, even in a downturn.
Seems that way for now, but then you have the flat-rolled products, steel for things like large cladding or structural components. They're behaving completely differently.
Okay.
Flat-rolled steel is the anomaly that really signals true demand weakness, I think. Despite tariffs on many flat-rolled products being raised dramatically to 50% back in June.
50%.
Yeah, huge tariff. But prices have remained soft. They've completely stagnated.
Why? High tariffs should mean higher prices, shouldn't they?
Normally, yes. But flat-rolled steel is just sitting on the warehouse shelf because high inventories built up earlier, plus significant new domestic mills started pouring product faster than builders need it right now. That new domestic supply is overwhelming the tariff protection.
So, okay, let's try and synthesize this complex picture for the listener. We've seen dramatic project abandonment, numbers like 88%, plummeting job openings, down 38%,
Right.
a collapse in future physical planning signaled by that 44% drop in the crane count.
Yeah, the big picture items look grim.
And then a really tight material supply chain for something like rebar, contrasted by a clearly demand-weak, flat-rolled market, even with huge tariffs.
You got it. The construction sector is definitely in a kind of contractionary shock, heavily influenced by high financing costs and that political uncertainty we started with.
So optimism is low.
The entire steel-consuming and construction industry is not feeling optimistic right now. Let's put it that way. This makes the fourth quarter of 2025 essentially a fact-finding quarter.
Fact-finding, meaning what?
Meaning everyone is trying to figure out this new normal. Adaptation to higher tariffs, restrictive policies, higher rates. That's being forced upon the market right now.
And that adaptation needs to happen before the uncertainty really subsides, and we can maybe see any real momentum building again into 2026.
Agreed. That seems to be the hope. Maybe consider this final thought for everyone listening.
Okay.
Given that those flat-rolled steel tariffs were raised so significantly, up to 50% back in June, specifically to protect domestic supply, yet prices have remained stubbornly soft, mainly due to high inventories and all that new domestic capacity coming online. What does that sustained softness truly signal about the depth of the construction demand problem?
You mean, is the slowdown even worse than the strongest possible protectionist measures can overcome?
That's the question I think is haunting the market as we enter the final months of the year. How deep does this go?
Thank you for listening. Explore more at www.staalx.com.